Hi everyone. A few people have suggested that I react to Rebecca Watson's video in which she is reacting to a video that Sabine Hossenfelder did that is called "Is Being Trans a Social Fad Among Teenagers?" And I still intend to do that, to react to Rebecca's video, but when I watched Sabine's video in the original, I found plenty to say about it myself without even considering Rebecca's criticisms of it, which, of course, are likely to be very different from mine. So in this hopefully short video, I'm just going to react to what Sabine says that I don't like, and I'll address Rebecca's comments in a future video. By the way, I'm not sure how well you can see my t-shirt. A friend of mine has brought out a nice range of turf tops. Her website is at turftribe.uk, and she is on Twitter at Turfinatrix. Now, for those who don't know Sabine Hossenfelder, she is a genuine science educator, author, and popular YouTuber with currently nearly 900,000 subscribers. The video she made about whether transgendering is a teenage fad is out with her normal field of expertise, which is physics, and it has attracted a lot of the usual antagonism, to put it mildly, from the gender loonies who can't bear to hear anything that contradicts what they want to be true. Most of Sabine's video is fine, the information is sound, but there are things in the first part of the video, the sort of introductory part of it, which don't contradict what the gender loonies want to be true, but which aren't true. Or rather, Sabine fails to provide any kind of evidence that they are true. Okay, first there's this.
Should transgender teens transition? This rather personal question occupies a prominent place in the American culture war. On the one side, you have people claiming that it's a socially contagious fad among the brainwashed woke who want to mutilate your innocent children. On the other side, there are those saying that it's saving the lives of minorities who've been forced to stay in the closet for too long. And then there are normal people like you and I who think both sides are crazy, and could someone please summarize the facts in simple words, which is what I'm here for.
Well, obviously it's only the other side that is crazy. Sorry, but if you're not incensed by what is happening, then either you're not normal, in the sense that you're not the full shilling, as we used to say, or you haven't woken up to the full horror of it yet. When Sabine refers to
socially contagious fad among the brainwashed woke who want to mutilate your innocent children,
she's maybe being facetious, but I'll hazard a guess that those parents or grandparents who have lost custody or contact with their beloved kids precisely because they want to stop their innocent children being mutilated or even just put on wrong sex hormones that can damage their long-term health and fertility, I'll hazard a guess that they won't find it remotely amusing. Next.
Gender identity is as difficult as sex is simple. Gender refers to our internal sense of being female, male, or something else.
Citation needed. Sometimes it seems to me that there are as many definitions of the word gender as I've had hot dinners, and I'd respectfully suggest that if you're going to call it an internal sense of being female, male, or something else, the onus is on you to explain what this internal sense involves. Does it, for example, mean that I, in spite of being female, have this internal sense that I can impregnate another female? The sense that I would be welcomed as a donor at a sperm bank? Because that's what males are evolved to do, whether they want to, whether they are able to, or not. And anything else they may do that doesn't actually involve their penis in some way isn't actually peculiar to males, though certainly some characteristics, some behaviours are more typically male or more typically female. Is that what we're talking about here? Could the fact that I would rather watch football or even put up a shelf than bake a cake mean that I have an internal sense of being male? Because if that's what you mean, then you need to explain why so many men who are so very stereotypically male have often sired children as well. Why do they decide in middle age or older that they've really been female all along?
I was 20 when I met my spouse. We were married 36 years at the time of the divorce. He told me about his belief that he was a woman at 32 years.
You might find my video and my webpage about autogynephilia helpful.
As everything internal, it's subjective and hard to properly define. Gender identity comes about by a mix of genes, acquired biological traits, environmental and social factors, and cultural expectations. When someone's perceived gender doesn't align with their biological sex, we've come to call them transgender.
So even though Sabine proclaims that gender is subjective and hard to define, she obviously buys into the notion of gender identity. Why? Why does she think we have an internal sense of being female, male, or something else? And what is the something else? We all know whether we are male or female. Those are the two options. There is nothing else. In a tiny minority of cases, there is deep and genuine and long-lasting distress at being what you are, and you wish you'd been born the other sex because you think you would have been happier. I accept that, but it doesn't make you the other sex, and pretending that there is this thing called gender identity that for virtually all intents and purposes makes you the other sex is hurting people. It's hurting women, lesbians in particular, in all sorts of ways that I have talked about countless times. It's hurting young gay men who, because they don't fit expectations of how men are supposed to be, are encouraged or forced to think that they are not really men at all. And it's hurting children who are led to believe that it's possible to change sex and that doing so will make them happier. We need to keep challenging this idea that male and female, or even masculine and feminine, can be reduced to feelings. When Sabine says someone's perceived gender doesn't align with their biological sex, she is going along with an ideology that is built on stereotypes of how men and women are supposed to be, and that is a regressive stance. Further evidence of her apparently uncritical acceptance of this ideology is shown here.
Some transgender people prefer not to draw a distinction between sex and gender, and instead distinguish between their experienced gender and the assigned gender, or the gender assigned at birth. For the rest of this video, we'll do the same.
Because Sabine doesn't explain why she is kowtowing to this anti-science nonsense. It's appalling how this phrase, assigned at birth, in respect of either sex or gender, has become normalized when in all but an extremely tiny number of cases a newborn sex is accurately observed and recorded. The purpose of this nonsense is to plant the seed of an idea that sex can be changed, that the fact that somebody was assigned male at birth doesn't necessarily mean they are really a boy child. They could be a girl child or something else, depending on their so-called gender identity.
Being transgender is neither new nor necessarily detrimental to mental health. It's just a not very common variation of normal human development. Personally, I find it highly questionable there's such a thing as normal human development to begin with. Have you ever seen a normal human? I haven't.
More citations needed. The notion of being transgender is actually very new in the history of humankind. Of course, there will always have been people deeply unhappy with the sex they are and what is expected of them because of it. And I'm sure there have always been men who have had a cross-dressing fetish or had erotic fantasies of themselves as women, but that doesn't mean they were transgender, because being transgender is an invention. It was a 20th century social construction, and contrary to what some commenters on my videos seem to believe, it was not the inevitable consequence of feminism. But that's for another video I'll make soon. So, nice bit of virtue signalling, Sabina, but may I humbly suggest that you probably know a great many normal humans, because the word normal only means what is typical, and in social contexts, this will vary over time.
More seriously, records of transgender people date back thousands of years. Several cultures, for example in India and Thailand, have communities of a third neutral gender.
Oh God, not this one again. I've dealt with this particular canard in my video called Third Gender Cultures, in which I take a brief look at what these so-called genders in various different countries around the world are all about. To say that they are in any way like what it means to be transgender in Western liberal democracies today is simply the appropriation of other cultures and traditions in support of a modern ideology with quite a different purpose. I have not found a single category of people in any other culture, certainly not in India or Thailand, that is based on people of one sex claiming to identify as the other sex and demanding all the sex-based rights, responsibilities and protections of the other sex. These so-called genders or categorizations of people are imposed on men and less often on women, because in these very patriarchal societies, they don't fulfill cultural expectations of how men and women are supposed to be, or in some places because the cultures they were born into have such strict rules around sex roles that sometimes a child is selected to fulfill the role assigned to the other sex because the family lacks a child of that sex. In that other video, I gave the examples of the Fa'afafine in Samoa, in which some boys are required to take on a traditionally feminine role, and the Bernesha of northern Albania, in which certain girls have to take on masculine roles. Sometimes the young person is okay with having to switch sex roles, sometimes not. So no, the fact that other cultures have histories of doing things differently is not an argument that Western-style trans-identifying people have always existed.
Unfortunately, transgender people have historically been stigmatized in many societies, have been ridiculed, been targets of violence, and been forced to fit into the binary masculine-feminine pattern. In many places, this is still happening, and in some countries such as Indonesia and Nigeria, being transgender is still illegal.
True, but why show someone holding the original rainbow flag, which is for LGBT people, not T people, so many of whom are straight? Anyway, in the most repressive societies, when it comes to sex, non-conformity simply isn't allowed. As I've said a million times, the progressive stance is to let people be however they like, as long as they don't hurt others. Gender ideology does hurt others. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Thanks for watching, and I hope to be back soon with with Rebecca. Bye for now.